I've made up my mind. I'm getting an Inferno. Yay. It's something that I've heard more than once. Yes, I have seen the videos. Oh man, the Inferno, it just blitzes down. Well, it doesn't really blitz, but it does hammer down a hammerhead. It's blowing up all kinds of big to medium ships. It's wrecking them. What do you think? Oh, this is the ship. This is the ship. I mean, I've seen it just absolutely destroy fighters. It's the greatest. It's the best. Right now, for what the game currently is, for how the game currently works, it is indeed. You might look at a lot of larger ships, like the Constellation, like the Aegis Redeemer to a certain extent, the Corsair if it was here, fingers crossed. And you might be thinking, okay, maybe that's not the thing. Maybe the new hotness is the Ares, whether it's the Ion or the Inferno. And I would say that that's not a bad take if you're looking at Star Citizen in the lens of within the next 6 to 9 months. It's not a bad take. One of the great things about the way the current system works in terms of buying ships and redeeming ships and moving things around is that you can always kind of return things to a zero state. You can always kind of go back and say, okay, what do I really want to keep? What do I not want to keep? And you can kind of shuffle things around. And so you do have that liberty. You do have that mobility to do what you want. So you can experiment with plenty of different ships over the years as Star Citizen comes out. But there's one thing to kind of keep in mind, and of course this kind of comes back to the balance argument where I say take your hands off the controls and just let it be what it's going to be, and other people are, no, this is overpowered, it needs to be rebalanced, it needs to be nerf please, because a lot of these people don't really understand that. And it sounds kind of goofy to say it this way, but Star Citizen is not a finished game, right? And we all know that. We're like, of course. But you look at a ship like this, the Constellation. You go, you pick your weapons, you pick what shield you want on there, what quantum drive, and that's pretty much it. That's all there really is to this ship currently. But we know that armor resistances and armor that is good against one thing or another thing is something that is coming down the road. Shields, different types of shields. If you think about, let's say you're an elite dangerous player and you set up a ship with just normal shields and normal armor, and you try to do stuff with that ship's not going to be really all that good at what you're trying to do. But if you know what you're fighting against, you can kind of build your ship around that. And so damage that would otherwise be fatal is negligible. Right? Do you see where I'm kind of going with this? And this is a system that has not surprisingly arrived in Star Citizen yet. This is a very foundational element that just hasn't shown up in the game. And it's one of the things that when we talk about Star Citizen, we talk about SC, this is the one area that really kind of makes me nervous about SC. This is the one area that makes me kind of look at Star Citizen and think, this is uncomfortable for me because we have gone so far, and yet these core foundational elements have yet to arrive in the game, right? And we're only really paying lip service to them every couple of quarters. We're like, oh yeah, we're thinking about a system like that, but thinking about it and doing it are two completely different things. And so long term, as these things come online, what SC is probably going to do is that if they were really kind of smart about it, they would bring these systems in to in effect balance things out that were overpowered. Say, oh well, ballistics are just kicking ass. Let's say the Ares Inferno just takes over Star Citizen like a disease, and it's just kicking ass. That would be a great time to introduce armor that looks like the normal armor that you have on your ship. So the outward appearance of your ship need not change, but you can say, oh, I'm going to get my armor made out of, Chabum armor. So it's really heavily resistant against ballistics. It's going to be layered, ceramics, depleted uranium, the whole nine. It might change the handling of my ship somewhat, but it is going to make me very resistant against ballistics. And all of a sudden, that equation can shift. And all of a sudden, the Ares Inferno, not so great. Whereas, let's say the Ares Ion might be even better. So you're constantly having to kind of play these games, or you can kind of build your shields around defending against the Ion, but your armor around defending against the Inferno. Do you see how we can kind of build things out into very interesting possibilities, and we can balance the game by simply adding the systems into the game that the game desperately needs, but we never really seem to have the time to do? ? This is kind of where I would like to see things go in Star Citizen. These are the systems that I would like to see brought into the game. I'm a huge fan of Pyro. I love what I'm seeing in Pyro so far. I love what they're showing us. And we'd all love a date, but we know how that goes. But I think that when you're looking at ships and you're looking at what you want for, if you're looking for what you want right now to just go out and kick ass, the Ion and the Inferno look desperately tempting, and I would not be surprised if come Crusader Day maybe something gets shifted around just to kind of give it a run. But ultimately, I think that the long-term safe choices, if you're just looking for a core ship that is going to be the foundation, the rock upon which you build your church, so to speak, I would not really look in that direction. I would look more to things that are along the lines of the 400, the Constellation, the Corsair, things in that range, a range that desperately needs to be expanded, CIG, but ultimately, I think that these are going to be the ships that survive over the long term. And let's be real, it's a lot of the times when you're seeing these videos and these DPS tests, you'll notice that the other ship is not firing back, right? And that's another thing to take into account. So it's cool. It looks really good. I'd say it's more of a danger to the smaller variety of ships than it is to the larger, but it is interesting. It is a very interesting ship. And so if you're just looking for something to, kick ass and have a lot of fun with, if you're willing to learn the gun, and what I mean by learn the gun, which is learn how to move the ship, move the gun, how to put the gun on target, and how to hit somebody at long range with that gun or as far out as you can, that could be a really fun few patches. But ultimately, I think that its overpoweredness now is going to be tampered down not so much by hard nerfs like minus 25% to your damage output, though I think they did hit the Ion pretty hard in the PTU. But I think that ultimately it's going to be kind of the reinforcing and the building of the core systems of the game, which ultimately kind of put that ship in a much more realistic perspective for how it's going to perform in the future. I think it's a lot of its performance right now is due to the fact that CIG, when it comes to the core systems that are going to make ships work in Star Citizen, CIG really still hasn't gotten their thumb out of their ass, and they're very, very slow at iterating on these things. And I think that part of the reason why is that they're looking too high concept. They don't want to just do what everyone else does, even though what everyone else does works. They're trying to figure out probably some interesting graphical layering that they can put in. So they kind of sit there and they try to think up these high and mighty ideas for this system, when realistically, all we need is stats on shields and stats on armor, and the option to buy and sell armor, and the armor can keep the ship's exterior looking just the way it was looking before. I mean, realistically, that's just a paint job over whatever armor that we have on there. And the composition of that armor can vary. And it can also alter the ship's performance depending on weight, things like that. There's a lot of cool things that we can do with this, but it has yet to make it into the game. And I think that it's because they're trying to do something completely next gen and next level with it, and they're spending too much time working off of napkins instead of just sitting down at the computer and just saying, okay, let's add values to these things and let's add them into the game and just make it practical. They're trying to go for something, next gen, and it's eating up their production time trying to think up this idea rather than just saying, hey, here's what works, let's do that. So the Ion ultimately, I think, is going to end up being kind of a niche weapon. It's going to end up being something fantastic, something great for those that enjoy that style of gameplay, which is something that is going to evolve over the next few patches. You're going to start to see people doing what doesn't work and what does work, and as that information gets out, you're going to see the Ion kind of develop the Ion style, or the Inferno and the Ares the Ares platform develop its style, develop its place in the universe. And it's not going to be for everybody. In all honesty, if you're a new backer to Star Citizen, this is a good ship, but I don't think that it is the core ship or it is the one ship. If you wanna know how I look at Star Citizen and what I think, me personally, what I think is the correct approach to thinking about ships in Star Citizen, especially if this is your first ship and you're thinking about something like this, approach it like the Mandalorian or Han Solo in Star Wars. What ship do they use? Well, the Razor Crest could be construed, well, it's more of a transport. It's more of like a Cutlass Black type thing. Whereas the Millennium Falcon's a bit of a heavier freighter, but it has its uses in other areas. I would look to ships like that first and have something like that. Because one of the big problems with having a lot of ships is that moving them from place to place. Certainly the people who purchased passenger ships are going to be making quite an interesting amount of money as they start to run taxi services for players between planets to help them move their fleet when they realize that, oh God, Area 18 or Orison is not where I want to live at all. And they start having to move. So it's a good ship. Would it be my only ship? No, definitely not. But it's going to have some interesting possibilities. But just remember, when you're looking at it and you're seeing all this kick-ass footage, that you're looking at an incomplete ship in an incomplete game. Star Citizen, it doesn't even qualify as a complete alpha yet. When people look at it and they say Star Citizen 3.15, it's not Star Citizen 3.15. It's Star Citizen 0.3.15. That's where we're at best. So, yeah, it's these ships and what these ships can do. We've only really recently started to see some of this stuff really come online, and just the idea of heat and capacitors and capacitors drain, turrets drain from the capacitor now and all this stuff. CIG has got a lot of balancing to do and a lot of very basic things to figure out, and they are way behind the curve on figuring these things out. And a lot of that has been held up by, well, we don't really have the UI to display this yet, and we're going to redesign the whole UI at some point in the next 5 years, so let's not do any of it. Or, whatever reason, they've kind of held all these things up. But it just be aware that what you're seeing now is most definitely not what you're going to have 2, 3, 4 years from now or 5 years from now.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, Please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.